Welcome to today's session of 20 for 20 in 2020, which is a wonderful opportunity to learn about specific professionals that you may be interested in hiring, who I will ask 20 questions of so we can learn all about them. And I hope to get this all done before the end of the year. And I'm making very good progress on this as well. So I'm, as you know, Ellen Newman. I am a trusted insurance advisor with the Norton Advisory Group, and I help people find creative solutions to important focuses in their lives, such as estate, business succession, retirement, and long-term care planning, and other insurance needs that they might have. And it is important that you stay tuned till the end of our program because I'm going to be talking about some important changes that are taking place in the insurance industry. Today, I have the honor of having our guest speaker, Nina Kaufman, who is a business attorney and strategist who I met many years ago, and I believe it was at a NABO meeting, which is
Probably was, yes.
National Association of Business Women Owners, or
Women
something
business
like
owners,
right,
exactly.
exactly, which was a great group. And we've stayed in touch on and off, and I've always been impressed with her career. And she spent over 15 years working with small businesses and helping them achieve their goals. And besides all that, she's also a stand-up comedian, so that may inform some of what we talk about. We'll
Right.
see.
Okay.
Okay. And so now I will let us get started. So the first question is, what is the primary focus of your work?
Well, again, thank you, Ella, so much for having me here today. It's great to see you, and just lovely that we've been able to maintain this connection throughout the years. That's such an important part of business. So really, the focus of my work has been helping solo and small firm owners grow their business beyond themselves. And that takes a couple of forms. It takes both a legal strategy as well as thinking about business systems and how do you make sure you're consistent in what you're doing so that you can either delegate it, automate it, or eliminate it, and that allows your business to grow.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. What led you to this particular approach, and how long well, I mentioned how long you've been doing this, but you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. So I have been in business, both this business and prior ones for 25 years. Hard to believe. It just like went by in a flash. So there were a couple of things that led me to this approach. The first was, again, that grounding as a business attorney, and seeing the areas where business owners had difficulty. And it wasn't just with the legal issues. It was also recognizing that they weren't being consistent with their actions. And as a result, they got into problems, either financial problems where clients weren't paying, or areas where they weren't as clear with their clients as they could be. And so I saw that there was this other aspect of business growth that wasn't being addressed. And that's what led me to start my firm, Business Exponential.
That's great. Now, how did you actually create your current business?
You mean in terms, ta-da, you put up a webpage and you're,
Right. Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
it really was an outgrowth of all of the years that I had been advising small business owners as an attorney and seeing what was missing. What were the issues that they kept coming back to? And for any business owner, we know that we start something because we see there's a need. We see that there is a recurring problem out there in our universe or the universe of our target market. And, and we're called to help solve that problem for them because we want their lives to breathe easier.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are some of the highlights of your entrepreneurial experience?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the great things that I love in my journey is that it has always been small business focused. So I get to work with really positive people. Now, I'm sure if you talk to a matrimonial attorney, they'll say there are some great things about helping people fight over the cat or the couch or the kids, whatever that is. That's not me. So, I enjoy those kind of thorny issues of business and business growth. How can you own a business that doesn't own you? And how can I help them sort of be an outside pair of eyes to help the owner see things differently? So I think that was, that was one of the reasons that got me on this path. Another, certainly, as going from employee to entrepreneur many, many years ago, was seeing that within the companies where I was working, people were not getting promoted to higher levels. They were hiring laterally for those additional skills. I mean, these were in law firms. I wasn't seeing women make partner. And in all fairness, I just want to say, I don't know that there was overt sexism, but these were litigation-based firms. And that's harder for women to do because often they have more of a role for caretaking for children and parents, and they're pulled in other directions. And so for them, just wanting to have more control over my destiny, I said, this is not for me. And that's when I started my first business.
Makes sense. What is your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Okay, my biggest failure. Because there have been some failures along. Well, let's just call them mistakes. And what do they say about mistakes? Mistakes are the name we give to our experience, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was Oscar Wilde. So I would say one of them was the way my first business partnership ended. And it did not end in a pretty way. One of the reasons it ended was, and the awareness from that, was that although we had been in business together with my partner and I for about 12 years, what we really had done was create a job for ourselves, not a business. We came to it as professional services providers, and it was all about what can we do, as opposed to building a business that is a bit more independent in being an engine for growth. And we were seeing things very, very differently. So that was one thing that, again, got me along thinking about how do you create this kind of business, particularly if you are a professional services provider. And the second awareness that came from that was we didn't have a lot of outside feedback. I had thought, oh, I have a business partner. It's somebody outside of me. I don't need a business coach. I don't need a strategist. I don't need any of that. But we were doing our own little dance of dysfunction. And without having some outside feedback, some outside insights, we weren't spurred to make the kinds of changes that probably would have benefited us. So from that, I learned you got to have business systems, and you have to have some kind of outside coach or advisor, especially if you're a solo or a small business, because otherwise it's too much of your business is in your head.
That's very wise advice and counsel.
Hard one. That was not easy.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I once went off and tried to start my own business with someone, and actually that didn't work out that well. Primarily because we ran into economic hard times. It was during a recession, and the impact of that, and how we both had a different attitude about how we wanted to deal with it at the time, led to its demise, actually. We went in our own directions after that. But so I can relate to what you're saying very, very clearly, and that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Let's see. What is one common myth about your profession or field that you might want to debunk?
I would say if I had a nickel for every time someone said to me, "Oh, you're an attorney. I'm glad I've never needed one of you." And I say that because attorneys are not just there to clean up the mess, and ideally we're there to help you creating the mess, if that's grammatically correct. So I think that's a big myth, that I only call the attorney in case of emergency. It's so important, and you know this as a trusted advisor, Ella, that when you get the advice in a proactive way, stitch in time saves nine. You're able to make smarter decisions at the outset instead of having to clean up a big mess. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that people have come to me, it's closing the for all these metaphors, closing the barn door after the horse is gone. So you sent out your invoice to a client, you didn't have a very clear contract, and now the client isn't paying you, and you say, well, now what? I want my money. Well, there were 12 different things you could have, should have done before you even got to that point. So those are, seeing an attorney and a strategist really as the advisors to help you minimize risk before you step in it, I think is absolutely vital, not just waiting to bring them on when there's a problem. Because we're outsiders in your business, so realize that we're working with hundreds of people like this particular business owner. So we're going to be able to bring creative strategies and thinking and just a more objective viewpoint than any one of us. I know for myself as a business owner, what I come up with in my own head is limited to my own experience. When I tap into people like you and others and accountants and bookkeepers and others, I'm now leveraging everything that I can do with the knowledge that they're sharing with me.
Absolutely. And that's how we work in my business as well. We partner with attorneys, accountants, advisors, because you can't do it alone. And in terms of business, like we get involved with business succession planning, and like you were saying, you can't do that suddenly one day you're going to sell your business and move on. You got to start planning that 10 years in advance at least, and in order to get the idea in place.
Years ago, I had someone call me up on a Friday and she wanted to have her business sold by Monday. I was like, I'm just not talking to you. This is crazy talk. Crazy talk.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing where we can step in and make that process easier, but people have to think ahead, as you point out. So that's where you create the partnerships and the bonds. So let's go to the next point. What type of clients do you tend to work with primarily?
Primarily, I tend to work with what I call seasoned consultants. And by consultants, I mean anyone selling their knowledge and expertise. So that may be, yes, people in consulting firms, communications, marketing, creative services, professional services like bookkeeping or attorneys as well. And the reason for that is dealing with a knowledge-based business is different from manufacturing. It's different from blue-collar trades. It's different from technology, partly because in many ways the owners are the business, and helping them get out of that to create a little more distance, a little more perspective is the kind of work that I really love to do.
Right. It's a great specialty, because I'm sure people like that need the kind of expertise you bring. And it's nice that you are so familiar with it. That's terrific. What are some of the problems or issues you help your clients address?
Well, I would say one of the big ones, and you'll appreciate this because it leads to money and money flow, and money flow leads to growth, is really helping them work better with clients so they're getting paid in full. With a lot of these knowledge-based business owners, and I had a number of them, for example, especially during this COVID time, where the contracts weren't canceled, but they were shifted. So whatever you may think you agreed to 6 months ago is now very different. But one of the challenges is for those professional services providers, they're often so eager to be of service and they don't want to lose the contract that the minute the scope changes, they're like, okay, I'm going to go along this happy little new route, instead of saying, okay, I'm happy to go on the journey with you. Let's make sure we've packed the right clothing. Because instead of going to the Bahamas, we're going to Alaska. And, I use it as a metaphor because, they don't take a moment to bring their client back, almost like project management, to say, okay, are the specs that we agreed to still appropriate? And is the money we agreed to still appropriate? Is the time that we agreed to still appropriate? So there were a number of clients who kind of got caught up in that. And it's one of the reasons I I kept saying that same thing over and over and over and over to clients. It's not just, oh, it's in your contract, but what are the business systems that let that contract be a living, breathing
Mm-hmm.
relationship document between the two of you? And that's why I created a new digital program called Keep 100% of Your Fee and Earn What You Deserve, because I kept saying the same things over and over and over again. In terms of what are your roles, what does the money look like, how are you managing the relationship, and what happens if one or the other of you says, you know what, this just isn't working anymore. So I think all of those issues around clients, ensuring money, recurring revenue that's a big portion of where I'm consulting, but also coaching clients to have those conversations with their own customers.
Right, and obviously they're needed, and very much so. Okay, let's take that beyond there. What happens if you're assisting a client and the matters that you're reviewing are sort of beyond the scope of what you typically cover? How do you go about working with that?
Well, one of the things that I have done over the years is, just is to stay current. So I know enough, and it's part of my background in legal training to be able to identify the issues, but I'm also very clear about where my boundaries are. And that's why, having been part of a small business community, I'm always keeping in touch with people, I'm networking, I'm trying to make sure I have these other service providers in my Rolodex, if you'll allow me, the last century reference.
Right.
So that I can make those referrals, because quite honestly, I don't want to be doing bookkeeping. I'm not
Sure.
good at, I don't know, human resources, insurance benefits. No interest, and it's not my background and expertise. And I fully believe, especially for smaller businesses, uh, they can't really afford to have people do it wrong. So it's so vital that they get connected with those who can do it right. So I'm always making referrals.
Well, that's so smart to work with the experts in that
Yeah.
particular realm and have, as we say, old in the old days, the Rolodex of the right people.
Showing my age there, yeah.
Oh well, we can still use the word
Yeah.
with a different meaning these days. What would you say is the biggest challenge you have with your own work right now, and how are you going to overcome it?
That is a great question, because in addition to being an advisor, I am also a small business owner. So one of the things I've been looking at with COVID, or if COVID has kind of forced me to look at much more starkly, shall we say, um, is the challenge of getting a regular pipeline and the limitations of time for dollar service. And again, that's a lot of what I'm talking to my own clients about. So that has actually given me the impetus to really focus on the digital, the e-learning, ways that, again, if I'm answering the same questions, if I'm coming up against the same issues over and over and over again, why not download my own knowledge and sell that as a digital course or a product, or an offering, so that other people can learn from it as well. And that gives me an opportunity to scale in a way that I couldn't. It gives me an opportunity to share education, where if I tried to do it one-on-one as an attorney, I could be running up against license issues if I'm dealing with a business owner who's outside of New York. Whereas if I'm selling information and it's more general, I don't have those same jurisdictional limitations. So it gives my business an opportunity to grow and to reach a wider group of people who need to hear it.
That's great. That's a wonderful idea, especially in these times when you can reach out to people virtually. You
Yes,
can go beyond your geographic area and
right.
extend your knowledge and utilize a new way of bringing in opportunities and revenue for your
Exactly.
business, which is great.
Right. And it's also a way that I have an alternative
Hmm.
in addition to time for dollars for
Hmm.
generating income. And, as you well know, bringing in more income
Mhm.
helps me at this stage of life. It helps me at my next stage of life. It helps me plan easier. It helps me have more breathing room, because for a lot of the professional services providers, it's like musical chairs. When the music stops and the chair's pulled out from under you, what do you have? And if you've only been earning just enough to keep yourself fed for that day, you could be in trouble for your life after that.
Right, right. So it's good to have alternatives.
Yeah.
Why is the selection of a business structure so important to businesses these days?
Well, Ella, I think that question, it's not the first question that business owners should be asking. And I know they often come
Mhm.
to me and they say, well, should I be an LLC or an S Corp? And
Mhm.
that's usually the first thing out of their mouths when they think about something legal and starting a business. But the choice of a business structure is actually the result of going through a process of deciding what's your goal.
Mhm.
Where do you want the business to take you? Because it's not like, oh, you're going to get an S Corp. You're going to get a C Corp. You're going to get a social benefit corporation. Now, I don't pull them out of the air. The issue is, what do you as a business owner want to achieve? How long do you think you want to be in this business? Do you see yourself having other partners? What are the goals? Are you having an IPO? Do you want investors? What's the mission for this business? And all of those factors put together, in addition to bringing in an accountant to help with some of the tax structure, all of that,
Mhm.
it's like you put all that information into the machine and bing, what using boom gets spit out is, okay, here's probably the best form of business for you. And
Exactly.
so the reason that that is so important, it's not just protecting you, but it is the end result of that decision-making process. What do you need and where do you want the business to take you?
That's important. It's a much more complex question than people often realize. And there are times when you may even have to change that in the
Oh,
process.
absolutely.
It's not necessarily static because you may have come in with a certain set of ideas and then things evolved in a different way, and you may find that a different structure is going to serve that better. Uh,
Exactly.
we run into that again with business succession planning. There's certain strategies you can use if it's a partnership, but not necessarily if it's a corporation. So it may make a difference in what ultimately you're going to do and how you're going to go about doing it. So
Yeah, and
those
to
things.
jump back to one of your earlier questions, it's another reason why it's better to have these advisors in your back pocket, because as your business changes and grows, or as you're starting to think differently, you can then ask, well, I'm looking to bring on other business owners, or I'm looking to cash out to a hedge fund. What would need to change? What's my timeline? So instead of it being a rush job or a real fire sale, if you're like, I am just so done with this business, I have to get out,
Mhm.
you have the time and the luxury of doing it right, and therefore maximizing your exit.
Absolutely, that is so important. Okay, how do you help businesses minimize risk?
Well, Ella, there are so many risks. There are
For
so
sure.
many risks. I can't say I minimize risk overall. I mean, there are certain risks
Uh-huh.
that I do help them minimize. I mean, there are certainly legal risks.
Uh-huh.
There are the financial risks of, oh, you're doing a lot of work for a client and then waiting to get paid instead of getting paid up front. That's one kind of risk. And there's also a risk of time, of spending a lot of time doing the same things in the same way over and over and over again, and not necessarily growing. So
Mhm.
I think all of those things together, I mean, the most important thing about having an outside advisor is to have that outside pair of eyes to either um, to help identify, to say, hey, we went through this last time, right? And you didn't change things. But also perhaps to help with a growth plan, so that there is forward momentum for the business owner, instead of just repeating the same activities over and over again. Because you and I know how easy it is to sneeze, and all of a sudden it's going to be a year from now.
Hmm, for
Time
sure.
passes very, very quickly. So I think in terms of the risks, it's, again, the legal and the risk of not being consistent in how you're treating clients, how you're dealing with your staff, and how your business is functioning, which costs people time. You waste a lot of time looking for stuff.
Hmm. That makes sense. And it's wise to assess that early on and get that in place. Do you provide formal updating, reviews, and maintenance programs for your business clients?
That's a great question. I'm checking in with my clients regularly, so I think that in and of itself, I can't say I have formalized it as a program. Uh, just is a way of staying in touch with them on a regular basis to say, okay,
Uh-huh.
what's been going on, or whether it's annual minutes, whether it's with my coaching clients that we're checking in regularly. Um, other group programs in terms of master classes and having an opportunity for some Q&A. All of those are ways really just to proactively checking in. It's not, I'm not a software program. Well, hey, here's a, version update 2.0. But as I'm learning things and putting that into practice, I'm then able to share that with clients to say, hey, here may be some better best practices that are coming down the pike.
Right. So as you're working with them, you recognize those opportunities and reach out with them, or you
Right.
reach out to them with
Mhm.
those updates in the process, which makes a lot of sense. Um, what's it like to work with you initially and then in the long run?
Well, I'm fabulous and fun. Uh,
I
uh,
agree.
Thank you. Um, it's where I feel like I'm actually quite consistent. That the person and the personality you get from the beginning is the person and the personality you will have in the long run. Um, and one of the reasons for that, as I say, it's being not just an attorney, but also a business owner myself. In a way, it is where the stand-up comedy background, I have to say it's past tense. It has been some time since I
Uh,
actually performed stand-up, but yeah, there was a 6-year period where I was doing it somewhat regularly. Um, and it was never to give up my day job or go on the road, but really just to learn better techniques of speaking. But it also had an added benefit in that kind of training has helped me find the funny, but also find the compassion. When you're dealing with business owners, there's a lot that they take on their shoulders. And it's not just in terms of tasks, it's not just in terms of clients, but there's an emotional weight as well that they carry with them. They may be the sole provider of their family. They may be providing for extended family members. They may be providing for all of their employees. So there's a lot there. And I find with the smaller businesses, there can be an intertwining of the legal, the business, and the personal issues. And I think that's one of the things that I'm able to bring to the table is an understanding of that, and speaking to that on the different levels.
mhm. Okay, that sounds encouraging and helpful. Um, let's see. How does a business determine if they are operating in a legal fashion?
Well, that question has several different answers.
Okay.
I mean, there is what is it you're actually offering? And if you're offering porn, like, well, that wouldn't be my client. Then there is, are you in strict legal compliance? So, for example, has your business filed the appropriate sales tax returns, or have you formally created an entity and gone through all those steps? And then there are also the things that lead to a healthy business, but
Mhm.
it's not illegal not to have them.
Mm.
You just might not be as profitable. So, for example, you could have a business without a partnership agreement. I wouldn't advise it, and it may not be healthy, but it's not illegal.
Mm.
So I do take clients through a kind of audit to identify what are those issues, what might be the time frame, what's more or less urgent at the time, so that there actually is a game plan for determining how can we create a solid foundation? The same way you would build a house and you pour the concrete. You don't just start with the walls.
Mm,
You need that solid foundation, and that's
right.
part of what the legal and the systems do.
That makes sense. Okay. Um, how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things?
Well, luckily, I am an avid reader.
Mhm.
So I am never without, I know, two, three, or four books on my night table, and I'm always pulling from those. Certainly, CLE requirements keep me, you got to do them every 2 years.
Right.
So that keeps me active there. But also, again, because I see myself as a business owner, I am eager for my own business growth, and I know how little I was taught in school. So if I'm learning all this on the fly, I need to be learning from people who are doing things, who have the kinds of businesses that I want to have. So I am often in webinars, additional courses, whether it's learning about marketing or technology aspects, systems, process, documentation, creating operating manuals. Again, whatever it is that can help my business be a little less time for dollars focused, because that's what I'm eager for my clients as well.
Right.
So it
So,
kind of works out, because that way I'm not just learning something esoteric because it helps my clients, it actually helps me too.
right. So you're in the same space as they're in, and you can understand and empathize and create something good that's good for you, that's good for them at the same time
Exactly.
in the
Exactly.
process. Right.
Hmm.
That makes sense. What excites you most about what you work on, the work you do?
That is a really great question. I th- I think one of the reasons that I have loved this area, and in particular the client, the consulting, creative, marketing, service provider clients that I serve, it brings me back to a couplet from an Emerson poem about success. And he says, "To know that one life has breathed easier because you have lived." And I think one of the things that's very gratifying in the work that I do is I know when I get off the phone with a client, um, they're going to be breathing more easily because they will have learned how to have a conversation, maybe around something that's difficult. They will have learned something new. They will have found out that, oh, I don't need to worry about XYZ as much as possible. They will have gotten a new resource. Um, and so I think for all of those reasons, as I say, that feeds me to be of service in that way.
Mhm.
Um, but also because I enjoy small business owners and how they're creative and they're positive because they're looking to build something for the future.
Mhm.
So that's what I enjoy most.
Well, you do sound like you're passionate about that, which is always the key. Um, Now, have you worked with businesses in other states, and have you worked with startups as well? You addressed that a little bit, I think, in
A
previous
little bit,
questions.
yes. So as I say, that's where kind of knowing my lane is very important. People use the word startups sometimes to refer to, oh, a business that's just getting started, or to the kind of company that is usually in the technology space or environment, or the kind that's going to be possibly going public and getting investor capital. So in terms of that latter, the kind that is automatically going to be technology, environment, investor based, those are not my clients.
Mhm.
But I have worked with people who have been very seasoned. For example, maybe they've been, working in an advertising or marketing firm for a number of years, and then they decide they're going to start their own. Those are people that I have worked with as well. In terms of different states, it depends, and that's where my two hats govern. With law, we're restricted to wherever we're licensed, and I'm licensed in New York. So
Right.
that's where my legal clients have been based. When it comes to the business consulting and systems, again, one of the reasons that I wanted to create a separate company to be able to grow in that fashion. And those are clients I'm able to serve around the country.
Which is great. Do you find you can partner with other attorneys in other states when like if you came across someone who had a business that's sort of in your lane, but they're located outside of your
Oh,
state?
absolutely. Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
If it's
how
in
you
my
would
lane,
handle?
but it's out of state, absolutely. Super, super happy to refer. I firmly believe, even in these times, there opportunities can abound as
Right.
long as you're playing in the right lane. And I would far rather have someone or have a business owner be in the right hands instead of my trying to figure it out, and is it really where I'm licensed. I like
Right.
to sleep, and I like to
Of
sleep at
course.
night. So so I don't want to be worried about malpractice or any of that. It's like just refer it and
Makes
then
sense.
get
Yeah.
help. Yeah.
Perfect. Understood. Okay, we're actually down to our last question.
Wow, that was fast.
Yes. And this one's a fun one. It's what can you tell us about yourself that we cannot find on the internet?
That you can't find on the internet. Okay. So not that I'm an oversharer, but there's a lot. So I've already, we've mentioned the stand-up comedy that I've shared. I will chant Torah in synagogues, so that I've shared
Ooh,
online.
nice.
I run 5K races that I share online. Where I went to school, that I was a DJ in college, yeah,
Ah,
that I shared
I think
online.
that's it. Yeah.
Um, if there's one thing that's not online yet, okay, so total escapist entertainment. My husband and I love superhero movies. And um, on my iPod, I have a playlist specifically dedicated to superhero theme music and songs that show up in superhero films like Led Zeppelin and AC/DC and things like that.
Ah, well,
So,
thank you.
so that way, yeah, when I'm exercising, I'm like, yeah, I'm Wonder Woman.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Nina. Now, so let's get the information about how our audience can contact you. What are the best ways for them to reach out to you?
Sure. The best way is real simple on my Business Exponential website. It's Business Exponential, exponential.com/contact. And if for anyone that is eager to not lose money dealing with clients, the program that I mentioned is at keepyourfullfee.com.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us about yourself, your background, your way you work with clients, and I'm sure people will be anxious to reach out to you and will look at your website. And at this point, I mentioned I would talk about an important point about insurance for a moment.
Yes.
Um, this is the end of the year, and we're in a very unique environment as far as the economy in general, partly due to the pandemic, partly due to the election and changes that are going to be taking place as a result of a changing political regime. And also the fact that interest rates are so low. All these things have an enormous impact on insurance products. So what I am pointing out that is important is that in this very last segment of this year, if you have an opportunity to review any life insurance related products that you currently own or using to facilitate different strategies you're trying to put in place or have tried to set up in the past, they may or may not still be relevant. And so what I'm offering is a fiduciary insurance review, a complimentary review of what you currently have in your insurance portfolios, either for yourself or your clients. And I'm happy to take a look at those for you and see if what you're doing makes sense. Also, if you're anticipating doing something in terms of purchasing insurance, life insurance for these strategies, doing it before year end would be very wise, partly because you can take advantage of these low interest rates to create a very positive outcome. And the insurance companies themselves are pricing products differently, which could be a concern. So please reach out to me at ella@nortonadvisorygroup.com, and I'm happy to help you. Also, again, look at the website for Nina Kaufman and Norton Advisory. Also, look for the next session of for 20 in 2020. There are a few more that I haven't done yet and haven't posted yet, so keep on the lookout. I will post them on LinkedIn and you will see them in other spaces as well. And in the meantime, please stay healthy and enjoy your Thanksgiving and enjoy it safely. And thank you again, Nina.
Oh, thank you so much, Ella. It's been lovely to reconnect with you.
I'm glad I was able to have you as a guest.